have gotten some absolutely fugly females in our entertainment over the past couple of years, and it's because they want to avoid appealing to the male gaze, and really they just don't want to make as much money as they could with a project. And on the upcoming James Bond game, 007 First Light has been the talk of the town over the past couple of days. We've seen some more gameplay, we've seen an extended look at it, and while the gameplay itself does look very fun and maybe a little bit too Hitman for some people's tastes, we know that the Bond girls are absolutely made for the modern audience. I have a few different things to show off, but before I get into the topic, if you enjoy the content I create, check out the links in the description, join the community in my live streams, and consider supporting through Patreon or YouTube memberships. Now, when it comes to entertainment, I don't believe that every single character has to be the most beautiful character possible. But when it comes to Bond girls, I definitely think that it's part of their flair, it's part of their charm, it's part of their style. You expect to see a Bond girl who is an absolutely gorgeous woman, and that shouldn't be changed, right? It's a part of their characters and who they are. And sure, they might be smart, they might be talented, they might be strong-willed, but they should also be gorgeous. And in the upcoming First Light game, a lot of people are debating why these developers tried so hard to make them look as unappealing as possible. Now, I think with just a few tweaks, some of these designs could have been savable, like Miss Roth up at the top in the red. I think that if they had slimmed down her jawline a little bit and they gave her a hairstyle that was flattering to her face, she wouldn't have looked half bad, and I think that there is potential there. Though, then you get into these other female characters, and I don't know if I see any potential with them. Like on the left, you have this extremely masculine stance and smirk. She looks very smug. You've got this suit with the turtleneck, which almost looks intimidating. And then you have the Frost Kieran special where the blonde hair is slicked back. And she almost looks like Amber Heard, but a significantly more masculinized one. And then, of course, on the right, you have Moneypenny, who is black. They didn't even try to make her look extremely appealing because, of course, you've got the big glasses and you've got the very, like, short, curly hair. And again, the turtleneck. And then you have M, who doesn't look particularly amazing either. None of these females are what you would expect in a James Bond product. Getting into the game itself for a second, I think that this looks pretty solid. There's a lot of information that we've gotten over the past couple of days, and I do think that they're trying to capture the essence of 007 while, of course, like trying to reinvent the wheel, which I don't think is the smartest choice. I think going for a very young Bond and it being a standalone is awkward. If you're going to have a Bond who is young, which in this case he's 26, I think that it should have been a trilogy, so we got him at 26, 36, and 46, and you really see how he grows into the character we all kind of expect him to be, but that's not the case. It's going to be a standalone, which is really awkward, and the fact that he's young, I know, is a point of contention for a lot of people. Now, it does really just look like Hitman with a new coat of paint, and I don't think that that's terrible, but again, it just doesn't particularly feel the way that we expected it to, and we do know that Patrick Gibson was cast as James Bond. We've been getting some photos, the trailer. We also have gotten the release date, which is pretty cool. But it says that he will be joined by other actors who will be voicing other characters, including Lenny James Greenway, Priyaga Buford M, Alistair McKenzie Q, Kira Lester Moneypenny, and Naomi Naki, which is going to be Miss Roth, which are the characters that I did just highlight a second ago. And I don't think, again, that this game is going to necessarily come out right and be an absolute dumpster fire, but I do believe that these kind of uglified or masculinized character designs are extremely intentional. We know that there are a lot of activists that are in the video game industry. We know that at any chance possible, they will try to rewrite a franchise and make it more positive towards sensitive audiences. They want to ultimately not create content that could offend people, or in this case, I guess, have people appreciate their characters, because I personally, as a woman, think having an ugly character does a disservice to female characters. But we know that James Bond has been attacked so much in the past as being polluted with misogyny. This is an article from 2021. It says, I say James Bond and not the James Bond movies because unfortunately Bond as a character was pretty plainly a misogynist from the very beginning. For me, this has soured my interpretation of the character's origin. It is certainly no accident that early Bond's philosophy towards women is in the ballpark of the Donald Trump Access Hollywood tape sexism. In the James Bond series is unfortunately just as iconic as Bond's vodka martini order, and this is from thecan.com. So they have, of course, attacked it many times in the past. I don't think that you should be complaining about a character. If you don't like that character, you don't have to consume that content. If you think that James Bond is sexist and bigoted and toxic and misogynist, then these movies and, of course, the books and the content is clearly not for you. So why are you trying to force it to be more in line with your vision? Here's another article from Red Brick, which is from 2022, and it also says the similar opinion. The insistent misogyny that pervades every installment of the Bond franchise would be far easier to accept if his character was not sold as the embodiment of British charm and as a role model for men. The Bond girl phenomenon is one that has sparked much controversy. Is it sexist, or is the so-called PC brigade taking things too far? I'm not here to argue that the entirety of James Bond's franchise is misogynistic, or that you should not watch the films. I am simply here to advocate for consuming media through a critical lens, consuming media that, rather than claiming the forceful sexism of characters as revered as Bond, is acceptable because the difference between fiction and real life is obvious. Now, as a woman myself, I do not necessarily think that having female characters who are supposed to be sexy and in some cases supposed to be set pieces is a negative thing. I think that that is a-okay. Not every single character that is created is like that, and sometimes you're going to have women who are, yes, supposed to be basically trophies. They're supposed to be on display, and James Bond having a sexy woman by his side is exactly what you would expect from this franchise. So to take these characters, right, and of course modernize them, make them politically correct, gender swap, race swap, and ultimately masculinize them, it's a very terrible look, in my opinion, for these developers. I do believe, again, that they did this intentionally, taking into consideration the criticisms that they've had towards the Bond franchise in the past, which really just boils down to them being offended by it. And they said to themselves, we have an opportunity. Let's rewrite everything. Let's make him young. Let's make these women less attractive, right? And let's demasculinize the male characters and then masculinize the females. And there are tons of gamers who are, of course, very upset by this. Bond girls in 1963 versus Bond girls in 2025. What happened? What are they? They were once women. Is that a transitioning Amber Heard in the right image? It looks like they tried to almost copy Amber Heard's look, but again, not keeping her feminine, sexy charm. And of course, Amber Heard is an absolute lunatic and she definitely needs mental help, but you can't deny that she's pretty. And it's like they took that inspiration, but they were like, well, we can't make her super pretty, so we're just going to change their faces around. It's similar to what happened in something like Star Wars Outlaws. Humberly Gonzalez is a very beautiful woman, but they took her and butchered the way her face looked in that game. It's happened so many times, like with MJ, or yeah, Wonder Woman is another really good example. DEI slop, I'm non-binary for this one. Here's another thread on it. If there's one thing that James Bond is all about, it's ugly women, right, guys? Because this game entered development a few years ago when wokeness was still dominating culture. That's why all the women in this game have man jaw. And I'm sure that there are going to be some people out there, right, who believe that this is just a coincidence and maybe they weren't intentionally trying to do this. But with the state of the industry and how many activists there are pushing their political ideology into the content content we're consuming, I don't necessarily think that we should be giving them the benefit of the doubt. This is gonna flop so hard. Woke sexually frustrated devs, body A and body B. Let's see, those writers will likely explain everything. It's for the mythical modern audience dead on arrival. And I think that the gameplay itself does look pretty good. And I think the graphics look decent. It definitely doesn't totally feel like James Bond to me personally. It feels more like Uncharted, Hitman, high intense action game, but I'll definitely be keeping my eye on this situation and probably covering this title again in the future before release. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think that these women look masculinized? Do you think that this is just a mistake and a coincidence, or do you believe that this is intentional? Let everyone know your thoughts down below. If you enjoyed this video and found it important and informative, make sure to give it a like, and if you didn't, give it a dislike. I appreciate your support either way, but I'll talk to you all again in the next video really soon.